December 1978. The phone call came at 3 a.m. When he answered, the voice on the other end made an offer that would solve every problem in his life: $100 million. The Riyadh palace stretched endlessly in every direction, its marble floors reflecting the glow of golden chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. Muhammad Ali sat in an ornate chair that felt more like a throne, still wearing his rumpled travel clothes from the 16-hour flight from Chicago. Across from him sat King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, one of the most powerful men on earth. It was December 15, 1978, and Muhammad Ali was in the worst financial shape of his life. His third fight with Leon Spinks earlier that year had been his last meaningful payday, but even that money was gone. Bad investments, expensive divorces, extravagant spending, and a lifestyle that assumed the money would never stop flowing had left Ali facing bankruptcy. His Chicago mansion was in foreclosure. His training camp in Pennsylvania was being seized by creditors. Lawyers were circling like vultures, and the IRS wanted nearly $3 million in back taxes. At 36 years old, Ali's boxing career was effectively finished. His reflexes had slowed, his legs were gone, and every doctor who examined him recommended immediate retirement. But retirement meant facing financial ruin with no way to dig himself out. That's when the invitation arrived. King Fahd had been following Ali's career for years, impressed not just by his boxing skills, but by his conversion to Islam and his principled stands against injustice. The king had watched Ali sacrifice 3.5 years of his prime, lose millions of dollars, and risk imprisonment rather than compromise his beliefs about the Vietnam War. Now the king wanted to meet the man who had shown such unwavering faith. "Brother Muhammad," King Fahd said, using Ali's Islamic name with evident respect, "you honor us with your presence." Ali managed a tired smile. The jet lag was overwhelming, and the stress of his financial situation had left him exhausted both physically and emotionally. "Your Majesty, the honor is mine." They spoke for nearly an hour about Islam, about Ali's pilgrimage to Mecca the year before, about the responsibility that came with being a famous Muslim in a non-Muslim country. King Fahd was intelligent, deeply religious, and surprisingly well-informed about American politics and culture. Finally, the king leaned forward in his chair. "Muhammad, I asked you here because I want to help you. I know about your financial difficulties." Ali's face flushed with embarrassment. Having his money problems discussed by royalty felt humiliating, but he needed help too desperately to let pride interfere. "I appreciate your concern, Your Majesty. I have a proposition for you," the king continued, "a way to solve all your problems permanently." King Fahd gestured to an aide who brought over a leather briefcase and set it on the table between them. The king opened it slowly, revealing neat stacks of documents. "I want to offer you $100 million, the king said simply. Ali's eyes widened. Even in his wildest dreams of comeback fights and business deals, he had never imagined a sum that large. $100 million would pay off every debt, save every property, and leave him wealthy for the rest of his life. That's incredibly generous, Your Majesty, but I don't understand. What would I have to do?" "3 things, King Fahd said, counting on his fingers. "First, you publicly renounce your American citizenship. Second, you move permanently to Saudi Arabia. Third, you become an official spokesperson for the kingdom, representing our values and our vision of Islam to the world." The room fell silent. Ali stared at the briefcase, his mind racing through the implications. Renounce his American citizenship, leave the country that had made him famous, that had also persecuted him, that he had fought with and fought for throughout his entire adult life. Become, essentially, a Saudi citizen and a voice for the Saudi government. "The money would be yours immediately," the king continued. "No taxes, no conditions beyond what I've mentioned. You would live in luxury for the rest of your life. Your children would never want for anything. Your financial worries would disappear forever." Ali looked around the opulent palace, at the wealth that surrounded them, at the life of ease and security being offered to him. He thought about his mounting debts, his failing businesses, the stress that was eating him alive. He thought about his children's futures, about providing for them the way a father should. But then he thought about something else. "Your Majesty," Ali said slowly, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Why do you want me to renounce my American citizenship?" King Fahd smiled. "Because, Muhammad, you have become too valuable as a symbol. In America, you represent the struggle between faith and patriotism, between individual conscience and government power. Your story is powerful precisely because you are American. You stood up to the American government as an American citizen." The king paused, choosing his words carefully. "But that story also creates problems for us. When you speak about Islam, Americans listen because you are one of them. When you criticize American foreign policy in the Middle East, your criticism carries weight because you are an American criticizing your own country. Ali began to understand. If you become a Saudi citizen, speaking as our representative, then your message changes completely. Americans will see you as a foreign voice, not as one of their own who has chosen a different path. You want to neutralize my effectiveness as an American Muslim? Voice, Ali said. I want to harness your effectiveness for our purposes instead, the king replied honestly. Ali sat back in his chair, the magnitude of the offer and its implications washing over him. This wasn't just about money. This was about identity, about purpose, about who he was and who he wanted to be remembered as. For the next hour, King Fahd laid out the details of the offer. Ali would live in a palace in Riyadh. He would travel the world as a Saudi ambassador, speaking at conferences, meeting with leaders, representing the kingdom's interests. He would be given a staff, a budget, and all the resources he needed to live like the royalty he would essentially become. Think about it, the king urged. No more financial stress, no more worrying about money. No more debt collectors or tax problems. Complete security for you and your family. That night, alone in the palace guest quarters, Ali couldn't sleep. He walked out onto his balcony and stared across the desert landscape, his mind churning through the impossible choice he faced. $100 million, more money than he had ever dreamed of earning, even in his biggest fights. Enough to solve every problem, secure every future, eliminate every worry that had been keeping him awake at night for months. All he had to do was stop being American. Ali thought about his childhood in Louisville, about learning to box at the Columbia Gym, about winning Olympic gold as a representative of the United States. He thought about his battles with the government over Vietnam, about standing in courtrooms as an American citizen, asserting his constitutional rights. He thought about the young black kids in America who looked up to him not just as a successful athlete, but as someone who had proven you could be both proudly Muslim and proudly American, someone who had shown that you could criticize your country's policies while still claiming it as your home. But he also thought about his children's college, educations, about medical bills, about the humiliation of losing his home to foreclosure. He thought about the peace that would come with never having to worry about money again. The next morning, Ali met with King Fahd for breakfast. The king was eager to hear his decision. "Your Majesty," Ali said, "I want you to know how honored I am by your offer. The generosity is beyond anything I could have imagined." The king smiled, clearly expecting acceptance. "But I can't accept it." The smile faded from King Fahd's face. "I don't understand. You're facing financial ruin. This solves everything. It solves my money problems," Ali said, "but it creates bigger problems for who I am." Ali stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Saudi capital. "Your Majesty, I am Muhammad Ali. I'm a Muslim, yes, and I'm proud of that. But I'm also an American Muslim. That's not an accident or a convenience. That's who Allah made me to be." He turned back to the king. "If I take your money, if I renounce my citizenship and become your spokesperson, then everything I've stood for becomes a lie. When I refused to go to Vietnam, I said I was willing to sacrifice everything for my principles. If I abandon my country now for money, then I'm proving that everything does have a price after all." "But Muhammad," the king protested, "think about your family. Think about your financial security." "I am thinking about them," Ali replied. "I'm thinking about what kind of man I want my children to remember me as. Do I want them to say their father stood up to the most powerful government in the world when he had principles to defend, but then sold out to the wealthiest king in the world when he needed money?" Ali walked back to his chair and sat down across from the king. "Your Majesty, you said something yesterday that stuck with me. You said I'm valuable as a symbol precisely because I'm American. You're right, but that value doesn't come from my boxing skills or my fame. It comes from the fact that I've shown America can be criticized by Americans who still love their country. If I accept your offer," Ali continued, "I become just another foreign voice attacking America from the outside. My criticism loses its power because it's no longer coming from someone who has skin in the game." King Fahd listened intently as Ali explained his reasoning. "The black kids in American ghettos don't need to hear from Muhammad Ali, the Saudi spokesman. They need to hear from Muhammad Ali, the American Muslim who proved you can stand up for your beliefs and survive the consequences." "But the money, Muhammad, $100 million. Think about what that could do for your life." Ali was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but absolutely certain. "Your Majesty, if I accept your money, people will question my faith. They'll say I sold out my principles for Saudi gold. They'll say everything I've ever stood for was just an act, and that when enough money was offered, the real Muhammad Ali showed himself. But more than that, Ali continued, I would question my own faith. I would spend the rest of my life wondering if I really believed in the things I've said, or if I was just waiting for the right price. The king was clearly disappointed, but he seemed to understand Ali's reasoning. You realize, King Fahd said, that you're choosing financial ruin over financial security. You're choosing uncertainty over guarantee. Yes, Ali said, I'm choosing to remain who I am instead of becoming who I could be bought to be. And if you lose everything, if you end up broke and forgotten, Ali smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Your Majesty, I've already lost everything once. I lost my title, my license, my earning years, and nearly went to prison. I survived that. If I can survive the United States government trying to destroy me for my principles, I can survive being broke for those same principles. King Fahd closed the briefcase and stood up. Muhammad Ali, he said, extending his hand, you are either the most foolish man I have ever met or the most principled. I suspect it's both. In my experience, Ali said, shaking the king's hand, those are usually the same thing. As Ali prepared to leave Saudi Arabia, King Fahd made one final gesture. I respect your decision, he said, but please accept this small gift. He handed Ali an envelope containing $500,000, not as payment for anything, but as a gesture of respect for a man who had turned down 200 times that amount to preserve his integrity. When Ali returned to Chicago, he faced the same financial problems he had left behind. The creditors were still circling, the debts were still mounting, and bankruptcy still loomed. But something had changed in him. The weight of impossible temptation had been lifted, and he felt lighter despite his problems. Over the next several years, Ali slowly rebuilt his financial life. He took speaking engagements, made appearances, and carefully managed his remaining assets. He never became wealthy again in the way he had been during his fighting prime, but he found stability and security through honest work. More importantly, he had preserved something more valuable than money, his identity as an American Muslim who couldn't be bought. In his later years, as Parkinson's disease ravaged his body, Ali would often reflect on that December day in Riyadh. Friends and family members who learned about the offer were amazed that he had turned down such life-changing money. Ali's response was always the same. I wasn't offered money, I was offered the chance to stop being myself, and no amount of money is worth that. The story of Ali's refusal remained largely private during his lifetime, known only to his closest associates and family members. But after his death in 2016, the details emerged through interviews with those who had been told the story. Today, when young Muslims struggle with questions of identity and belonging in America, they can point to Muhammad Ali not just as a great athlete, but as a man who was offered everything to abandon his American identity and chose to remain true to both his faith and his country. Because sometimes the most powerful choice you can make is the choice not to choose the easy path. Sometimes the greatest victory is turning down the fight you can't win without losing who you are. And sometimes the most valuable thing you own is the thing that no amount of money can buy, the knowledge that you are exactly who you chose to be,